Welcome to Prime Suspects, starring Adam Bjorn and Prime Sports co-founder Joe Brennan Jr. I'm your host, Matt Landis, and today's topics include the inside scoop on Prime's Super Bowl action and an initial reaction to a proposed tax hike in Ohio, Nevada sportsbooks reporting their first losing month on football in more than 12 years, and the potential for the leagues themselves to launch and operate exchange products. Diving into the latest from inside Prime Sports, Adam, how would you describe your noteworthy takeaways from Super Bowl bets you've been taking at Prime over the past week?
All right. First of all, I need to lead with last week was a green week in New Jersey and Ohio and Arizona. All three, Monday morning, green across the board. Thank God NFL's over. Thank God college football. Now we can take some real bets and win some real money.
What was the driving force between that green sweep this past week?
There was a bit of NBA, a bit of college basketball. Tennis had been really good lately. Golf's back. But it was, there was some up and down days, but then the weekend was really good. It surprisingly held, one day we held 37% or something on a decent amount. Again, it was just, I guess results fell, and that's kind of the thing. Did results fall? Did we finally some go our way? I think we've put a bit more effort on the trading side of it. We've really been diving into each of the different environments themselves. But yeah, it just happened that, it was the first Monday waking up and it was just green across the board, green pre, green live, everything sort of fell last week. As for the Super Bowl, it's all Kansas City money. We're going to need the Eagles. Look through a bunch of the props. It doesn't seem like there's anything significant right now. A little bit of the rushing on the over for Hurts. Holmes got a bit on the under on the passing and stuff like that, but nothing that predominantly stood out that was even master money on certain things. And we got 400 plus props, I think, in Arizona and New Jersey. I think Ohio was a little bit thinner, but yeah, it's been good action so far, but fairly well balanced. It doesn't seem like anyone's really decided how this game's going to get played out. It does appear that they think it's going to be tight and close. The props that they're betting sort of tends to maybe it's an under, whereas I thought that these teams would just, end up throwing over each other or being able to run. But it's the props, the way they're getting bet is it's seeming like the pros are leaning towards a tight game and a low-scoring game right now.
As you speak to essentially knowing at this point that you're going to need Philadelphia, I'm seeing the market split between Kansas City -1 or -1.5. Is there any interest in your end possibly going to Philadelphia +2, +2.5, anything to go out on a limb, even just to take a few bets to balance out that action? Or are you comfortable just taking a stand, trusting market efficiency, and letting 11 to 10 do its thing?
Right now, we're just sticking. I think we got one. The last one I looked at half an hour ago. It may be bounced between 1.5. That's generally the teasers. The 6-point teaser going to 1.5. They'll go to 7.5. Bring the total whichever way they want to go, etc. But right now, when you're at that number, pick them to 2. What's it really matter, except for, again, teasers possibly. But just let it roll. I mean, I think Eagles is a side I'd want to be on anyway if I'm going to cheer for one or the other. So let's just stay there and see what happens. It's not like it's going to get to a 2.5, I don't think, or a 3 or anything like that crazy. So let the money just keep coming in, fall as is, and manage it how we can.
And one more follow-up there. As you mentioned, the potential teaser exposure should this become +1.5 or +2 for Philadelphia. Since there's only one game on the board, teasing totals generally not a plus EV move. So is there even any trepidation when it comes to putting the Eagles in conventional teaser territory? Or would you kind of embrace teasers if people want to pair a side with the total in the Super Bowl?
Yeah, not overly concerned about it. Just there might be a mindset of staying 1 instead of going to 1.5 and things like that. But what's it going to matter? The Eagles will win by a couple of touchdowns, and it won't land near the total, so it won't be within the 6 points of that. So just let it run. We'll go for it.
And speaking of the Eagles, I know that with a New Jersey presence, you may be seeing more action toward Philadelphia there relative to Ohio. Check me if I'm wrong on that. Any noteworthy differences in what the book needs in New Jersey relative to Ohio?
No, it's actually not. So I did look at that, knowing again, especially the offices are 20 minutes from downtown Philly, but nothing at this point stands out on that aspect of it. Again, it's really KC money, and we're kind of set up to be both sides of Pennsylvania as well. So, you might catch sporters both sides depending on where they are. But I think the Super Bowl, unfortunately for us, possibly no one's really needing to go chase a sports book to get a number or to get a limit. Generally, everyone should be able to get a bet down. So if there's anyone needing to chase, go across borders to get limits for this game, then sports books in their jurisdiction need to recheck some of the limits and some of the profiling they've done there.
Well, focusing in on Ohio a bit more, and Joe, bringing you into the fold, decked out in all your Eagles gear for this special Super Bowl episode. As an operator in Ohio, any initial thoughts on yesterday's proposal to double the tax rate from 20% to 40%?
Obviously, it's pretty terrible. The market's barely 3 years old, and now we're going to have our third proposed tax rate. Governor DeWine, I get it. He's swinging for the fences because he's term limited out of office. A lot of this money here is ticketed for like big dreamer type things. Stadiums for like the Cleveland Browns and Indians, minor league ballparks, youth sports, education. Like, who's against any of those things, right? But to suddenly think that he's going to double the tax rate on sports betting and he's just going to have this font of liquidity available to him, one, I don't think it's a very reasonable approach towards it. Two, it's incredibly bad faith with licensees who came into the state. We've negotiated, not just us, but everybody else in the state negotiated 3 years ago, our market access agreements, all of our contracts, everything. We gamed out how we were going to do business in Ohio based on a 10% tax rate. Doubling it to 20 in 1 year, okay, it hurts, but we're still within it. But doubling it to 40, what I want to ask is Governor DeWine signed the original bill. He was there for 10%, and now he's up at 40%. It's kind of unreasonable, especially when you look at other things in the state, when you look at how incredibly low the taxes are on, for instance, alcohol, and I love the way they tax it. It's on a per gallon basis. So it's 18 cents per gallon of beer is the tax rate, the state tax rate on alcohol in Ohio. 38 cents on liquor per gallon is the state tax rate. There's a hell of a lot more beer and liquor consumed in Ohio. And I know because I was an undergraduate in college in Ohio, than there is sports betting. So I think a lot of this is also performative. Like, yeah, let's go and get sports betting. Sports betting has had a really terrible, last couple of years in media cycle. It's a great way to seem like they're being punitive. Nobody ever cries for the house when they increase the taxes on us. We right now don't have a mechanism for passing tax increases on to consumer, except by making the product worse, which if we decide to do that, and that's us and Fan Kings and everybody else, suddenly decide like, well, look, if we got to pay 40%, then we're going to have to increase the pricing on our product. We're going to have to make the product less attractive for Ohioans. Or we might just say, you know what, for a prime sports, this doesn't make sense. We can't do business at a 40% tax rate. Now, Governor DeWine might come back and say like, well, look, it's still lower than New York, which is 51%. And he's right. This is, again, we've talked about this before. This is the result of FanDuel, DraftKings, and everybody else in that first cohort that opened up in New York, basically cutting the industry's own throat there a few years ago so that they could get the handful of licenses that were going to be available to operate in New York State and agreeing to that tax rate. Now, what do you say to other big states? Illinois, Ohio, Pennsylvania, New Jersey has introduced a bill in the past year to increase the tax rate to 30%. How does the industry say, no, we can't do that when all of your industry leaders agreed to 51%? So this is one where I think everybody's got to slow down. I think we've got to get in there. We've got to get to Columbus. We have to get with the governor's office. And we have to talk about a little bit of fairness here. Again, nobody cries for the house, but you have pretty large, substantial businesses that based how they were going to do business, how they were going to scale up, and what they were going to offer in Ohio. And to increase the tax rate 4 times over in less than 3 years of operation is so much bad faith. You don't want to talk too harshly about people like a sitting governor in a state that you operate in, But it's really disappointing to see somebody like Governor DeWine, who's smarter than this. I know he's smarter than this, to have this kind of punitive tax deal.
Adam, what are your thoughts on this latest news out of Ohio and where you think it nets out?
Oh, Joe just said we're not allowed to speak bad of people, so I'll reframe my terms.
You can speak bad. You've got a West Pennsylvania accent. You can say whatever you want about the.
I mean, it's fucking moronic. I mean, if you're gonna do something like have some nuts and bring in iGaming and rape those players, if you want to do something like that, like they just don't understand that. Again, sports betting is the lowest margin sport. My advice to Prime would be pull out. See if you can get out of the contract, pay whatever, get out of the state, become a sweeps company or something. Like, this is insane. It's getting insane. It's just, it's beyond ridiculous with these tax rates going up. All these legislators are doing, again, is boosting the unregulated market. We're seeing it in their own backyard right now with sweeps. There's nothing much more that can be said except understand the business, understand the margins, understand that now you're putting your consumers at risk to go and place bets somewhere else that doesn't have the protection that the regulations have. It's insane.
Yeah, I mean, Adam touched on something really important there. We've seen very recently a lot of alternative models starting to pop their head up above the fray. They're no longer trying to, keep their heads down, operate sub rosa, sweeps, prediction markets. There's going to be potentially a lot of competition for the state regulated sports book if the states continue to be hostile to these businesses. And that's what this is. This is just rank hostility. So if they want to, I don't know. I don't know that we're necessarily the golden goose, but we could be. But if they just want to strangle us in our crib by continuing to escalate the taxes on this, and this was always going to be the danger once sports betting was legalized, because here in America, there's nothing that restrains a legislator saying like, hey, I got a great idea. Let's increase funding for this thing, that thing. And let's go get it from these guys. And they always head to the vice industries, but everybody seems to have conveniently forgotten booze and alcohol. And by the way, weed's legal and radically undertaxed compared to us in Ohio as well. For some reason, it's only cool to raise taxes on us, but booze, alcohol, and weed, they're leaving it nice and low. It's interesting in a Republican state that they're embracing that kind of tax increase with both hands so readily. One can only hope that the contacts that traditionally the gaming industry has had in Republican circles kind of come to bear here right now and maybe bail us out on something disastrous. And let's just say to anybody listening out there, Adam is merely speculating when it comes to like dropping Ohio as a destination, but you can see how stuff like this certainly makes it hostile to any business. We are a volume business, not a margin business. Even the guys who are over there milking the public with their parlay action, they're doing it at like 15 to 18%. That is not a margin business. Okay. That's killing the golden goose.
All right. Well, from the Buckeye State to the Silver State and our water cooler segment this week, per a January 30th article by ESPN's David Purdom, Nevada sportsbooks lost $2.1 million on football in December, marking their first monthly loss during the NFL regular season since November of 2012. Across the NFL and college football, favorites won more than 76% of games outright and covered 59% of the time, both of those being top 5 figures in the Super Bowl era. And Joe, Eilers & Krejcik estimates U.S. operators will book $1.5 billion on the Super Bowl, a 20% year-over-year increase. What's your point of view on how much of the projected increase is based on bettors approaching the big game with deeper pockets after a December to remember?
I don't know if it's necessarily that. You have added a little bit of additional market volume onto this. The offers are crazy right now that you see being, put out there by the market leaders, leading brands. I don't think there's any one particular thing that might be driving that increase. And again, Eilers & Krejcik, they're just taking a swag at this thing. They don't really have a way of being able to accurately measure this thing or project it ahead of time. The one thing that you can say is like, it's so pervasive now in the game. Like we've had a few years now where the gambling experience around Super Bowl, which was already prevalent prior to PASPA being overturned and legalization being enacted. I mean, it was already kind of like an open thing. Only city in America that was more crowded on Super Bowl weekend than the host city was Las Vegas. So this is nothing new, but it's now become so pervasive through everything. You have Nickelodeon is covering the games, not covering gambling, but every mainstream broadcaster is talking about the spread. They're talking about the money line. They're talking about the total. They're talking about the props. It's inescapable right now. And I think that's probably driving it more than necessarily a successful month that you had.
And Adam, one recurring theme from you on this show has been the approach of all of this as an ultra marathon. To that end, Richard Schutz replied to Purdum's post on Twitter, reinforcing the long view, expressing a sense of calm he had during losing periods from his legendary days at the Stardust in Vegas, thinking that when bettors had cash on hand and felt smart and lucky, that was probably going to end well for him. How does that sentiment land with you?
I mean, that's 100%, nail on the head. But I did think, they lost on football, but they still won 15 million collectively on sports betting. Just probably lost on one sport, won it back on another. I don't know what that number was overall. Let them win. Just the whole game of this, the whole purpose of this, why they have jackpots on slot machines and everything like that is you have to let them win and keep them winning at times so they keep reinvesting. If it's always a loss, then people realize that this is unsustainable. When you just throw that win in occasionally, or the squares have a really good month, or a bunch of them hit 10-team parlays, then pay them and watch them come back. So not getting too wrapped up into that. And I definitely don't think it has anything to do with people having money in their pockets for the Super Bowl. Eggs are like $10 a dozen now, right? So, there's a lot of things going on in the space, and losing's good for bookmakers at times. One, it gives them a sense of reality and checking to make sure that their mindset's right, that this is a risk game, and let the people win some money, let them get ahead. And it was good timing. Pre-Christmas, New Year, let them go out, enjoy it, have a good New Year's Eve and start the year off, and you'll probably see January's numbers and they've lost. So again, not getting too wrapped up into it. It's a long game. I wish more people would see it that way and let the little guys win occasionally.
A couple jump balls for you guys to tie a bow around this segment. First, when Nevada sportsbooks posted their last losing month on football in 2012, the market was dominated by straight bets. Today, it seems to be mostly parlays, which tend to be much more profitable for books. So all that considered, how much more surprising is it to see a winning month for bettors driven largely by parlays?
So knowing the Nevada market, you got to remember the Nevada market is kind of an odd market. You have the visitors market, the tourist market, but then you have the locals market. Locals market is always very good as far as a percentage of it being parlay action. Like for a long time, Stations, which was always, running like number 2 in the state, I would say, like 40% of their action was coming in on parlay. So it's not like the rest of it. It's not like they were just doing straights and now they're doing a lot of parlays. It's always been a good mix, in part because of the locals segment of the marketplace.
Adam, does that align with what you were going to chime in with?
Yeah, again, 12 years ago, it's a different world. There was, no same game parlays. There was one state versus 38, 36 now. A lot's changed since then. The fact that there wasn't a losing time between 2012, 2018 or something like that is probably more surprising than this one. But it kind of shows, again, when you have more than, 76% of the favorites winning, and you got people betting toothpicks to win lumberyards, there's going to be some lumberyards paid out occasionally, and that's when it's going to really be felt. But again, they lost a little bit on football. They won plenty overall. It's just where the numbers and the data, you can make it sound like anything you want it to sound like. And that's where I think ultimately when we look at, dive into some of these splits in money and tickets and stuff like that, you can make it sound however you want it to look. But diving into how much is at each number and some of those things gives some more insight. So just numbers and data has been played into an article that wants to get a headline, and I would just pretty much leave it at that for now.
All right, well, one more question for you guys, framing this as a potentially timely Super Bowl connection. I've heard it's almost impossible for books to lose on a Super Bowl because of efficiency of main markets such as spreads, totals, and money lines.
We
and
lost
the sheer
last
volume
year
of rec dollars on parlays flooding the market. I'm going to get to the flip side here. Expansive prop menus can be a whole lot to manage. And when you have a lot of exposure on a spread, total, or money line, that certainly can leave books vulnerable. So while there may be some open doors for astute bettors to exploit more edges than they'll typically find in any other individual game, what are your guys' thoughts on if and when we'll see books take a net loss on a Super Bowl?
Guaranteed, if Kansas City win this Super Bowl, majority of them will take a net loss. Yes. I'm guessing that across the board, if it's Kansas City and over, there's positions that are guaranteed for losses for sports books across the country now. For the amount that you write on game, first half maybe, versus the propositions, and you have, and same game parlays, you have a Kansas City over, Mahomes MVP, Kelsey touchdown, they're going to just tear books in your asshole. So it's open. I mean, every Super Bowl, it's one game. You don't have a full schedule to lose a couple of big games, but overall it works out. It's one game. So it's almost 30-40% chance that there is an outcome that books are guaranteed to lose. And that's just what it is. It's one game. So there's no way to hide kind of thing if certain.
Yeah, like nobody's going to come out of here. No sportsbook's going to come out here and have absolutely killed it unless, I don't know, the meteor hits and somehow nobody's able to cash. Like, I don't know if we could bet meteor in this mix, although I know a lot of people in Dallas and Pittsburgh and Buffalo really would have bet meteor here. So it's just one game. This is primarily a marketing endeavor right now, Super Bowl. This is the biggest opportunity for these brands, for these casinos to be able to get the broadest possible attention for their product and maybe make a little bit of money to boot. But to Adam's point, like, it's just one game. I mean, it's not going to churn up as much as like a regular season, Saturday and Sunday of college football and NFL.
And ultimately, again, maybe if Zach Bourne wins the MVP, books may make out like it, but this is, again, one game. There's not that many variables. Yes, you write decent money, but you still probably don't write as much on the Super Bowl as you do on a full slate NFL. Again, they're there, but they're very mild compared to what, 12 favorite covering the spread Sunday is going to do to a book versus, underdogs cleaning out the board. Let's treat it as it is and get as much action as possible.
That was an incredibly specific example result that Adam gave. Like, Philly wins, it's on the under, and Zach Baum wins the MVP, which I would totally love. Go linebackers. It's almost as if he got the script ahead of time.
Spoken like,
oh boy, imagine if that hits. Like, this is like
I don't know if you're going to be blessed or cursed.
Well, I know Adam had some exposure on Dre Greenlaw to win Super Bowl MVP last year. We'll see if there may be any Zach Bond MVP in his portfolio this time around, as well as booking a whole lot of action on the game. But guys, if we go ahead and pivot from the Super Bowl to the landscape as a whole and into our look ahead segment, Florida State University professor Ryan Rodenberg raised eyebrows in a recent Casino Reports article by suggesting he could see a world in which the leagues themselves launch and operate exchange products. So, Joe, want to kick it off with you here. How much merit is there to this kind of idea?
Let me preface this by saying I know Ryan Rodenberg. I've known him for a long time. He is a very smart guy, particularly when it comes to issues like sports data. He was one of the real pioneers on this. So I think I've done a good job stipulating that. And I will say he is absolutely wrong, and let me tell you why. It's not because he's not a smart guy. And it's not because I am certain, and I know that the leagues have. The first is the segment that we were just talking about, the opportunity to lose a lot of fucking money. That is not what the leagues are in business to do. They're not, hey, let's go for that roller coaster ride of variance on how much money. They're not, well, let's go for the long ride. No, they're like, pay me now. I want this. They want big checks. They want it now. They want profit surety. So sportsbook, sports betting, and I don't care, like, oh, they're going to make an exchange because that model has really killed it here in America, right? It's just not, the economics are not there. The commercials are not there to make it attractive to them. Add to that, how many can drink now? Because I'm about to say Shante Porter. Like we've already got most of the country pretty much convinced that if you sneeze in the direction of Patrick Mahomes, it is a penalty. That the black and whites are totally going to be trying to push this one towards KC because of the whole narrative of three-peat. Like the integrity concerns alone, the narrative, the reputational damage, or at least perceived reputational damage. There is no way that the leagues could get into this business. So I'm saying this at the same time, they're probably getting ready to announce that they're doing deals with Couchy, Robinhood, Polymarket, and whomever to have them backstop that thing. It would be stupid. It would be absolutely stupid for them to get involved in this business. They should just sit back, continue to collect the big checks that they're getting today, continue to gouge us on the official data for as long as they can, and don't even begin to get into, like, to go from saying, now remember, I was in a mano-a-mano battle with these guys for how long? Well, they said the worst thing that could ever happen to us and the reputation of our game was the introduction of sports gambling. To see them completely flip 180 on this, to say like, all right, well, we're going to be the sports book or we're going to be the exchange. And like, it's just not within the realm of credulity, but we live in weird times.
All right. Well, by steering clear of the Terry Rozier drama, I thought we might get a 1 week reprieve from the Jonte Porter drinking game, but I guess that wasn't in the cards this week. Sticking with the task at hand, Adam, would you say that you agree with Joe on this one, or is there a world in which this could make sense?
100% agree with Joe on that one. And he covered it more than I could have. Don't see it. Why would they want to? Yeah, I don't see that happening.
Ryan Rodenberg, if you're listening, I still think you're a really smart guy. Sports law professor. He's a great follow on Twitter. Just excuse him this one. So,
all right. Well, Joe, to go ahead and maybe humor your friend and play out this thought exercise. If anything like this were to come to fruition, how would it affect incumbent operators in the regulated U.S. market?
I don't know. Like, look at how well ESPN bet's done, right? Like, what's the leagues, and look at how well Fanatics has done. What are the leagues going to offer to players to entice them? Like, come bet with NFLbet.com or NBAbet.com. What are they going to offer? Like, look, this is not a business that you just get into. It's like, this is not, I used to love all those years of, like, where I was making my way through, San Jose, Costa Rica, or Antigua and places like that, when you'd hear the bookies joke like, well, anybody could be a bookie, right? It was like their universal, derisiveness towards the number of people who just thought they could bumble into this, start making a ton of money in sports betting because it's so easy. This is not an easy business. You've got ESPN Bet, Barstool, Fanatics, and they are spilling billions of dollars to make millions of dollars. Again, it'll be the same thing. Like, Fanatics can throw jerseys. All the stuff that the leagues can throw at you, Fanatics can throw at you. All the stuff that the leagues can throw at you, ESPN can throw at you. They've done it, and they're not going anywhere. So I don't understand what the leagues could do to displace the guys who have already turned, like the casino companies and then the two DFS companies. I don't see something like the leagues dislodging them from where they're at right now.
All right. Well, we're going to go ahead and wrap up on that note. But to the audience, we do have one programming note to share. We're slated to join Captain Jack Andrews on his acclaimed annual Super Bowl show on Saturday evening. If you're interested, feel free to check out Superstream 59 on Unabated's YouTube channel starting at 4 p.m. Eastern, with the three of us scheduled to hop on at approximately 8 p.m. Eastern for about 15 minutes of what we can refer to as prime time. Now, whatever content you do or don't consume between now and the Super Bowl kicking off, enjoy the game on Sunday, and we'll catch you next week. Thanks for listening to this week's episode of Prime Suspects. Register for Prime Sports at primesports.com and download the Prime Sports app. You can follow us on Twitter at Prime Sportsbook, at Joe Brennan Jr., and at Adam Bjorn 2. You must be 21 or over to play on Prime Sports. Always bet responsibly and within your limits. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER.